Hello, it's Father Francis, and this is a new look at Lent. Hello and welcome. This is the 5th Sunday of Lent, and as we take a new look at Lent, today the readings are very, very powerful. In Ezekiel, we hear that God is making this wonderful promise that He is going to open the graves of all of those who are His. And then, if that is not enough, the great resurrection, then He is going to bestow upon them great lands. In our gospel today, Jesus is going to reveal that He is the resurrection and the life when He raises His dear friend Lazarus from the dead. Getting back to our first reading in Ezekiel, I think this is a fascinating reading. Because in many ways, when you take a second look at the theme of Lent, you begin to see that God invites us to lay down, something very small in order that we're going to inherit something far beyond our wildest imagining. Think about this. When we think about people dying and being buried in a cemetery, well, you might say that they own a little piece of real estate. In fact, I've actually stood on my own grave, believe it or not. As a priest, we're encouraged to make our final arrangements while we're still above ground. And so about 6 months ago, I actually went to a cemetery where, as a seminarian, I actually worked there for almost 4 summers. So this cemetery is actually almost kind of like home for me. Kind of an interesting way of looking at it, huh? But I actually remember standing there and going, this is my grave. And one day I will be inside the ground instead of above it. But then when you look at the reading from Ezekiel, so God, calls to mind this powerful image. Here we have, this little plot of earth, this little patch of soil, this little bit of land that we call ours, our final resting place. And yet, what we're going to do in the resurrection is we're going to trade that little piece, that little plot of earth and land, and yet God is going to give us this great inheritance. And so it's sort of like we take something very small and we sacrifice that, and God is going to now give us something even greater. And that's what happens, I think, with Lazarus, is that Mary Magdalene and Martha, as they are grieving their brother, Jesus comes to Martha and, she's a little bit perturbed with him. She says, Lord, if you had only been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And Jesus is like, you don't quite see, do you? You don't quite understand. And sort of like, don't you believe in the resurrection? He goes, well, and she takes her little idea of her little theological idea and says, well, yeah, on the last day, the resurrection on the last day, I believe, yes, the dead will rise. And that's not what Jesus wants her to focus on. It's not some just little statement, but it's an actual reality that's standing there right before her. You see, in the presence of Jesus, who is the resurrection and the life, it is impossible for death to exist, let alone come near Jesus. And so what we find is that when He begins to move towards Lazarus in the tomb, death has no other option but to flee. It has to go. It is cast out, literally. And so then what's left is the life of Christ rushing back into Lazarus. He's a prefigurement of what resurrection is going to be like for us, except the life that we will inherit will be eternal. There won't be a second death. And so today, as we take a new look at Lent, we recognize that Jesus truly is the way and the truth and the life. And he asks us, as he asked Martha, do you believe this? Well, thank you for watching, and this is Father Francis, the Faith Guy, saying let's tune in next week for a new look at Lent.